My boyfriend's making out with my best friend in a resort pool on Instagram, and honestly, I'm not even sad anymore. I'm pissed. Let me tell you how I found out my relationship was a complete lie. Because this is some next-level betrayal that I'm still processing, and you all need to hear this. 3 weeks ago, Brian told me he needed space. Just walked into my apartment, where he'd been basically living rent-free for a year, by the way, and announced he was overwhelmed and needed time to figure things out. Said work was stressing him, he wasn't sure about us anymore, needed a couple weeks to clear his head. I asked him straight up if this was a breakup, and he swore it wasn't. Said he loved me, just needed time alone. He was going to stay at his brother Steven's place, and we'd keep contact minimal while he sorted through his feelings. Fine. Whatever. I told him to take his time and figure his stuff out. I wasn't going to beg someone to stay who clearly had one foot out the door already. He packed a bag and left, and I went about my business. Yeah, it sucked. But I wasn't about to fall apart over a guy who couldn't communicate like an adult. You know who was very supportive during this time? Emily. My best friend of 6 years. The person I trusted with literally everything. She came over that first night with wine, told me Brian was probably just freaking out about commitment, that he'd come around. For the next 3 weeks, she was texting me constantly, inviting me out, being the perfect supportive friend. I told her everything about my relationship with Brian, every argument, every doubt I had, every private thought. She knew it all because that's what best friends do, right? Wrong. 2 Fridays ago, I'm at work during my lunch break, scrolling Instagram while eating a sandwich. Emily's story pops up. Some sunset beach photo. Pretty. Whatever. I swipe to the next one. Brian. In a pool. At a resort. With Emily's arm around him. Next story? Them kissing. Full makeout session in the pool. Caption says, "Sometimes the best things are unexpected," with heart emojis. My coworker Maggie asked if I was okay because I guess my face did something dramatic. I showed her my phone and she literally gasped out loud. But here's the thing, I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I got angry. I called Emily immediately. Voicemail, called again, voicemail. Texted her asking what the actual hell was going on. No response. Meanwhile, she's posting more stories. Them at a swim-up bar having drinks. Them on the beach, living their best life. Called Brian. Also voicemail. Left him a message telling him to call me back now. Maggie wanted to send me home, but I said no. I finished my entire shift because I wasn't about to let this ruin my day more than it already had. I went home, opened my laptop, and started going through their social media like I was conducting an investigation. And guess what? The signs were everywhere once I knew what to look for. Brian commenting on Emily's gym selfies from months ago, her posting from coffee shops near his work, flirty comments between them that I'd somehow missed. They'd been building up to this right in front of my face. I called my sister Josie and told her. She was ready to drive down from Seattle and commit murder. I told her to calm down because I had this handled. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I wasn't going to just sit around feeling sorry for myself. That whole weekend they posted story after story. Beach photos, dinner photos, couples massage, all of it. And neither of them answered a single one of my calls or texts. Radio silence while they paraded their betrayal all over social media. Monday at work, I was fine, focused. Yeah, some coworkers knew what happened because word spreads, but I held it together. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of breaking me. Tuesday, I drove past Steven's place where Brian claimed he was staying. His car wasn't there, obviously, because he was in Florida. Wednesday afternoon, Emily finally called me back. She started with this whole speech about how sorry she was, how things just happened, how she and Brian had been talking for months and developed feelings. She said it so casually, like she was telling me about a new TV show she was watching. I let her talk. Let her explain how they'd connected while Brian was figuring things out. How they'd been fighting their feelings but couldn't ignore them anymore. How Brian had been unhappy in our relationship for almost a year. Then I asked her one question. How long exactly had this been going on? She said months. They'd been talking for months while she was comforting me about my relationship problems. While she was giving me advice about Brian, she was falling for him behind my back. And then she said the thing that made me see red. She said Brian and I were basically over anyway, that our relationship had run its course, and she was actually doing me a favor by helping him move on, that I should eventually be able to be happy for them. I laughed. Then I told her she was delusional if she thought I'd ever be happy about this, and hung up. Called Brian next. He answered this time, launched into this whole explanation about how he never meant to hurt me, how feelings just develop, how he and Emily just fit together in a way we never did. I asked him if he'd been using my best friend to gather information about me, and he said it wasn't like that. Emily just naturally talked about me because she cared. But yeah, he admitted she'd shared things I'd told her in confidence. My fears, my relationship concerns, all of it. He said it helped him understand my perspective better. He helped himself to my private conversations, used them to figure out how to handle me while planning his exit strategy with my supposed best friend. I asked if the space was just an excuse to test drive a relationship with Emily, and he got quiet. Then said it was complicated. He needed time to figure out his feelings, and during that time he realized Emily was what he wanted. I told him we were done, and he could figure out how to get his stuff from my apartment because he was never stepping foot in there again. He asked if we could talk in person when he got back to explain properly, and I said absolutely not. Hung up. And here's where I surprise you. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I got strategic. I went through my apartment and boxed up every single thing Brian had left, called his brother Steven and told him to pick it up by Friday or it was going in the dumpster. Steven was actually apologetic, said he had no idea Brian was in Florida with Emily, thought his brother was actually staying with him and dealing with relationship stuff. Even he'd been lied to, threw out photos of us, deleted our couple pictures from my phone and social media, removed every trace of him from my life in one productive evening. Thursday, I went to work like normal. Friday, I hit the gym after my shift. Saturday, I deep cleaned my apartment and rearranged furniture so it didn't look like the place where Brian and I had lived together. Sunday, they came back from their trip. I know because Emily posted them at baggage claim looking tan and happy. They immediately started posting couple content, dinner dates, movie nights, acting like they'd been together forever. Our mutual friends were split. Some reached out to me privately saying they couldn't believe Emily would do that. Others just accepted it and commented on their photos like everything was normal. I unfollowed anyone who seemed cool with this situation because I don't need that kind of person in my life. My mom found out from Josie and called me worried. I told her I was fine, really. And I was. I was angry, but I was fine. For the next week, I watched them live their best life on social media. Going to restaurants we used to go to, hanging out with friends, acting like the perfect couple who definitely didn't build their relationship on lies and betrayal. And the whole time I was watching, I was thinking, because here's what Brian and all these cheating guys don't understand. When you betray someone, you don't just lose them. You lose the benefit of everything they knew about you, everything they protected you from, everything they could have warned the next person about. And I knew things about both of them. Things they probably hadn't shared with each other yet because they were too busy being caught up in their exciting new forbidden romance. Emily had a history, a pattern. She'd cheated on every single boyfriend she'd ever had. She'd told me this years ago when we were drunk and being honest about our worst qualities. Said she got bored easily, loved the thrill of something new, couldn't help herself when she was attracted to someone. She'd literally cheated on her ex Jason 3 times before he finally dumped her. I'd helped her through that breakup. Listened to her cry about how she wished she could just be faithful, how she knew it was wrong but couldn't seem to stop herself. Brian had no idea he was dating a serial cheater. Probably thought he was special, that what they had was different. And Brian had his own issues that Emily didn't know about. His jealousy, his need to control situations, his tendency to get paranoid about his girlfriend's male friends. Things I dealt with and worked around because I loved him. Things that would absolutely come up once the honeymoon phase with Emily wore off. They thought they'd won. Thought they'd gotten away with it cleanly and could just ride off into the sunset together. But I wasn't done watching, and I definitely wasn't done planning. Friday night, exactly 2 weeks after I'd first seen them in that pool, I was lying in bed when Emily posted a story of them at some party with mutual friends. Everyone laughing, having fun, looking like the perfect happy couple. I screenshotted it, added it to a folder on my laptop where I'd been collecting things. Their social media posts, timestamps of when they'd started commenting on each other's photos, screenshots of old conversations where Emily had told me about her cheating history. I wasn't planning anything illegal or crazy, but I was planning something. Because they'd humiliated me, and worse, they thought I was just going to disappear quietly and let them have their happy ending. I opened my notes app and started writing down everything I knew about Emily's patterns, about Brian's jealousy, about their weaknesses and insecurities and the things that would inevitably cause problems between them. Then I started thinking about Jason, Emily's ex who she'd cheated on repeatedly. The one who'd finally had enough and dumped her. I'd met him a few times at parties back when they were together. Nice guy. And if I remembered correctly, Emily had mentioned he'd moved back to town a few months ago. I smiled. And if Emily thought she could just move on to her next victim without consequences, she was about to learn otherwise. I closed my laptop and went to sleep. For the first time in 2 weeks, I slept great. Because tomorrow I was going to start putting things in motion. Update. Okay, so remember how I said I had a plan? Well, it came together fast, and honestly, it's kind of genius if I do say so myself. Monday morning, I'm at Target picking up laundry detergent and some other random stuff before work, when I literally run into Brian. Like, actually almost crashed my cart into him in the cleaning supplies aisle. He was with Emily. The look on all our faces was priceless. Emily grabbed Brian's arm like I was about to attack them or something. I just stood there with my cart, staring at them. Brian actually had the nerve to smirk at me. Smirk. Then he put his arm around Emily's waist and pulled her closer, made this whole show of kissing her cheek while looking directly at me. Emily giggled like this was all so amusing. He goes, "Hey, didn't expect to see you here. You doing okay?" In this fake concerned voice that made me want to throw my detergent at his head. I said I was doing great, thanks for asking. Emily jumped in with this sugar-sweet voice saying she hoped there were no hard feelings, that they were just following their hearts, and she hoped I could be mature about the situation. Mature. She wanted me to be mature after what they did. Brian chimed in saying, yeah, it would be really sad if I couldn't move on and kept dwelling on the past. That I should focus on finding my own happiness instead of being bitter. Emily nodded along like they'd rehearsed this whole speech. I smiled and told them I hoped they were very happy together. Emily looked surprised, like she expected me to make a scene. Brian looked almost disappointed that I wasn't giving him the drama he clearly wanted. I walked away fuming, but I kept my cool. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Wednesday, I was at the pharmacy working the register when Emily came in. Of course. She walked right up to my register with her prescription even though there were 2 other registers open. She wanted to rub this in my face. She stood there while I processed her prescription, acting all friendly, asking how I'd been, saying we should grab coffee sometime and talk things through like adults. I told her I was pretty busy these days, and she goes, "Oh, I'm sure, must be hard adjusting to being single again." Then she leaned in and whispered that Brian was amazing, better than she'd ever expected, and she was so grateful things worked out the way they did. Said maybe if I'd been better at keeping him interested, he wouldn't have looked elsewhere. I handed her the prescription bag without saying a word. She left looking satisfied with herself. That night, I sat down and really thought about what I wanted. I didn't want Brian back. Watching him at Target made that crystal clear. He was a smug asshole who thought he'd won. Emily was a snake who got off on rubbing her betrayal in my face. I wanted them to hurt the way they hurt me. And just getting back together with Brian wasn't enough. They needed to experience real betrayal, real humiliation. That's when I remembered Jason, Emily's ex, who she'd cheated on multiple times. The one she told me about during one of our drunk heart-to-hearts years ago. She'd said he was boring, that she couldn't help cheating because she needed excitement, that she wished she could be faithful, but she just got bored so easily. I found him on Instagram through Emily's old photos from 2 years ago. He was tagged in a bunch of them from when they were together. Looked like a decent guy. Into hiking and craft beer, seemed pretty normal. I sent him a DM Friday night, introduced myself as Emily's friend, said I had some questions about their relationship if he had time to talk. He responded Saturday morning saying sure, he'd be happy to talk about Emily since she'd apparently moved on to destroying other people's friendships now, so he'd seen the social media drama. We met Sunday afternoon. Jason showed up in a hoodie and jeans looking exactly like his photos. We grabbed a table in the back and I just laid it all out for him. How Emily had been my best friend, how she'd slept with Brian while pretending to support me, the whole thing. He wasn't even surprised. He said that was classic Emily behavior. Told me about how she'd cheated on him with his coworker, then with a guy from her gym, then with some random dude she met at a bar. Every time she'd cry and apologize and swear it would never happen again. Every time he'd believed her because he loved her and thought she could change. I asked him when they broke up and he said about 9 months ago. Final straw was when he found messages on her phone to 3 different guys, all flirty and inappropriate. He'd confronted her and she'd tried to turn it around on him, saying he was too boring and didn't give her enough attention. Then I asked him the important question. Had Emily contacted him recently? He pulled out his phone and showed me messages from the past week. Emily had texted him Tuesday saying she missed him and wanted to catch up. Thursday, she'd sent him a photo of a restaurant they used to go to saying it made her think of him. Friday, she'd asked if he wanted to grab drinks sometime. He'd been ignoring her messages because he wasn't about to fall for her manipulation again. But seeing the dates, I realized she'd started reaching out to Jason right around when she and Brian got back from Florida. While she was posting couple photos with Brian, she was already lining up her next option. I leaned back and told Jason I had a proposition for him. He raised his eyebrows and asked what kind of proposition. I told him I wanted to expose Emily for exactly who she was. Show Brian and everyone else that she was a serial cheater who would never change, but I needed his help to do it. He asked what I had in mind, and I laid it out. I wanted him to respond to Emily's messages, agree to meet up with her, let her flirt and escalate things the way she always did. And when she inevitably tried to sleep with him, because based on her pattern, that's exactly what would happen, I wanted him to record it. Jason stared at me for a long moment. Then he asked if I was serious, and I said completely serious. Emily destroyed my relationship and my friendship, and was now rubbing it in my face at every opportunity. She deserved to have Brian see exactly who he'd chosen over me. He said he'd think about it. Asked me to give him a day to decide if he wanted to get involved in this level of drama. Monday evening, he texted me. He was in. We met again Tuesday at a burger place near the mall to plan everything out. Jason said Emily had texted him again Monday night asking if he'd gotten her messages. He'd responded that morning saying, yes, sorry, he'd been busy with work but would love to catch up. She'd responded within minutes, saying she was so glad, they should definitely get together soon, she had a lot to tell him. Jason showed me the messages, and I could literally see her setting things up. The flirty undertones, the I've been thinking about you, all of it. I told Jason to suggest meeting Thursday for drinks, somewhere public but with booths where they could talk privately. He sent the message while we were sitting there and Emily agreed immediately. We spent the next hour going over the plan. Jason would meet her for drinks, let her talk and flirt and work her way up to suggesting they go somewhere more private. If she made a move, he'd go along with it, but make sure his phone was recording. I gave him specific instructions on how to position it so it would capture everything clearly. He asked me if I was sure about this, and I said absolutely. Emily had made her choices. She'd betrayed me, humiliated me, and was now actively taunting me while already lining up her next victim. She deserved whatever was coming. Wednesday, I saw Brian and Emily together at the grocery store. They were in the produce section, and I heard Brian before I saw him. He was telling Emily loudly that his ex, me, had seemed really pathetic when he ran into her at Target, like she was barely holding it together. Emily laughed and said something about how I'd always been weak and emotional. I ducked behind the bread display before they saw me, listened to them trash talk me for another 5 minutes. Brian said he felt bad for me because clearly I'd had no idea he was unhappy, and that must be such a blow to my ego. Emily said I'd probably never find anyone as good as him, and I'd regret losing him. The audacity. He left me, remember? After asking for space to screw my best friend? But I didn't confront them. I just left my cart and walked out of the store because I knew if I stayed, I'd say something I couldn't take back. And I needed them to think I was broken, needed them to feel smug and comfortable while my plan came together. Thursday, I texted Jason, good luck. He sent back a thumbs up and said he'd message me when it was done. I spent that evening pacing my apartment anxiously, checking my phone every 5 minutes. Josie called me around 8 asking if I was insane and what was I thinking. I told her this was exactly what Emily deserved. And Josie sighed and said fine, but if this blew up in my face, she was not going to say I told you so. Around 11, Jason texted me, it worked. Got everything. You were right about her. I called him immediately. He answered and I could hear he was in his car. He said Emily had been all over him from the moment they sat down at the bar, touching his arm, getting close, talking about how much she missed him. After 2 drinks, she'd suggested going back to his place. He'd agreed, got to his apartment and strategically placed his phone on his dresser recording before things went further. And Emily had absolutely gone for it. Kissed him, started taking off clothes, the whole thing, all on video. He said watching it back was surreal because this was exactly the Emily he remembered. Impulsive, selfish, unable to control herself when she wanted something. He asked if I wanted him to send me the video, and I said yes, but not yet. Asked him what Emily had said afterwards. He laughed bitterly and said she'd laid there talking about how she'd made a mistake getting back together with Brian, how she'd never really gotten over Jason, how maybe they should try again. He'd played along, said he'd think about it. Then she'd gotten dressed and left, kissing him at the door and saying she'd text him tomorrow. I asked him to sit on the video for now. I was still figuring out exactly how and when to drop this bomb. I needed maximum impact. Friday morning, Emily came into the pharmacy again. This time she looked extra happy, practically glowing. She came right to my register and started talking about how amazing her life was, how in love she and Brian were, how she'd never been happier. I just processed her prescription silently while she talked. Then she said something that made my blood boil. She said Brian had told her I'd looked really sad when he saw me at Target, and it made her feel a little bad. So she wanted to reach out and let me know she hoped I found someone eventually. That maybe if I worked on myself and figured out why I couldn't keep a man interested, I'd have better luck next time. I handed her the bag and smiled. Told her I'd actually been working on myself a lot lately, and I was feeling really good about where things were headed. She looked confused, like that wasn't the response she wanted. Saturday, Brian sent me a text out of nowhere. Said he'd heard through mutual friends that I'd been having a hard time and he wanted to make sure I was okay. That despite everything he still cared about me as a person. I didn't respond. Sunday, he texted again saying Emily felt bad about everything and wanted to make sure I knew they didn't mean to hurt me. That they hoped eventually we could all be mature enough to stay friends in the same social circle. I responded, tell Emily she should focus on her relationship with you. Seems like it might need her full attention. He sent back a confused emoji and asked what that meant. I left him on read. Monday, Jason texted asking if I'd decided what I wanted to do with the video. Said Emily had been texting him constantly since Thursday night, saying she wanted to see him again, asking when they could meet up. She was already fully checked out of her relationship with Brian while still posting couple photos with him on Instagram. I told Jason to hold tight, that I was waiting for the perfect moment. And then Tuesday morning, that moment arrived. Emily posted on Instagram a long caption about finding your soulmate and knowing when you found the one, with a photo of her and Brian at some restaurant. The comments were full of people congratulating them and saying they were such a cute couple. I screenshot it and sent it to Jason, told him it was time. He called me and we made the final plan for exactly how this was going to go down. Wednesday evening, I was going to make sure Brian and Emily both got exactly what they deserved, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. Final update. Okay, so you're all probably dying to know how this played out, and honestly, it was even better than I imagined. Wednesday evening, Jason texted me saying Emily had just messaged him asking if he wanted to come over to her place. Brian was apparently working late and she was bored and wanted company. Jason screenshot the message and sent it to me. She literally used a winky face emoji. I told Jason to say yes, but to suggest they meet at that bar where they'd gone Thursday instead, then go back to his place after. Needed the video to be clear that Emily initiated everything, that she deliberately went to meet her ex while in a relationship with Brian. Jason agreed to meet her at 8. I sat in my apartment watching the clock, checking my phone constantly. Around 9, Jason texted, "She's here. This is happening." I paced my living room for the next 2 hours. Josie called me freaking out, asking if I was really going through with this. And I told her absolutely, Emily deserved everything that was coming. Josie said she supported me, but also thought I was kind of terrifying right now, and she was glad we were sisters and not enemies. Around 11:30, Jason texted, "Done. She just left. Sending you everything now. My phone buzzed with the video file. Jason had positioned his phone perfectly on the dresser, and the video was clear. You could see Emily's face, hear her voice. I saved the video to 3 different places. Then I sat there trying to decide the best way to make sure Brian saw it. Thursday morning, I was getting ready for work when I had an idea. I created a burner Instagram account. No profile picture, random username. Sent the video to Brian in a DM with just one message. Thought you should know who you're really dating. This was last night while you were at work. Then I sent the same video to Emily from the same account with the message. Brian's going to see this. Might want to get your story ready. I went to work feeling powerful for the first time in weeks. Maggie asked why I looked so happy, and I told her she'd find out soon enough. Around noon, my phone started blowing up. Brian was calling me. Emily was calling me. Texts from both of them. I ignored everything and kept working. The messages from Brian went from confused to angry to desperate over the course of 3 hours. He called me 11 times. Left voicemails ranging from asking what was going on to demanding I call him back to literally begging me to pick up. Emily's messages were different. She started with asking what I'd done, then moved to threatening me, then trying to play victim, saying I was ruining her life, and I was a terrible person for recording her without permission. I didn't respond to any of it. Around 4, my manager Blake pulled me aside and said I was getting a lot of personal calls and texts, and was everything okay? I told him everything was fine, just some drama with my ex that would blow over soon. He said okay, but maybe put my phone on silent for the rest of my shift. When I got off work at 6, I had 43 missed calls and over 100 texts. Most from Brian, some from Emily. I got in my car and finally listened to Brian's voicemails. The first few were him asking me to call him, saying he really needed to talk. Then they got angrier. Him saying I was a psycho for sending that video, asking where I even got it, demanding to know if I'd hired someone to follow Emily. Then the tone shifted completely. Voicemail number 8 was him sobbing. Actual crying, voice breaking, barely coherent. He said he'd confronted Emily about the video and she'd admitted it was real, that she'd slept with Jason Wednesday night, that she'd been texting him for weeks, that everything he'd left me for was a complete lie. He begged me to call him back, said he needed to talk to someone who understood him, that I was the only person who really knew him and he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Voicemail 9 was him saying Emily had tried to blame me, saying I'd somehow set this whole thing up and manipulated Jason into sleeping with her, that I was obsessed with ruining their relationship because I couldn't handle being alone. Brian said he'd told her that was insane, but then he started wondering if maybe I had been involved and could I please just call him and explain what happened. Voicemail 10 was back to sobbing. He said Emily had admitted she'd cheated on all her exes, that she'd told him she couldn't help herself, that she got bored easily, that she'd probably never be faithful to anyone. He said he felt like an idiot for believing she was different with him. I sat in my car in the pharmacy parking lot listening to him fall apart, and I felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction, just this cold certainty that he deserved every second of this pain. I deleted all the voicemails without responding. Emily's texts were a different story. She started by calling me every name in the book, saying I was psychotic, that I'd orchestrated this whole thing, that I'd somehow convinced Jason to sleep with her and record it just to break her and Brian up, that I was obsessed with Brian and couldn't handle that he'd moved on. Then she switched tactics and tried to play victim, said she'd made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes and I was being vindictive and cruel. That real friends forgive each other and we could work through this if I'd just be reasonable. That Brian had believed her that this was all my fault and we could both move past this if I'd just admit what I'd done. Except apparently Brian didn't believe her because his messages told a completely different story. Then Emily got desperate. Said she was sorry for everything, that she knew she'd hurt me but this was too far. That ruining her relationship was petty and immature, that I should be ashamed of myself for sinking to this level. I finally responded to her with one message. You ruined your own relationship the second you decided to cheat, just like you've ruined every relationship you've ever had. I didn't make you sleep with Jason. You did that all by yourself. She tried calling me immediately. I declined and blocked her number. Friday morning, Brian showed up at my apartment. I'd just gotten out of the shower and was getting ready for work when I heard pounding on my door. I looked through the peephole and there he was. I opened the door but didn't let him in. He immediately started talking, words tumbling out so fast I could barely follow. He said he'd ended things with Emily, that she was a liar and a cheater, that he never should have believed anything she said, that she'd manipulated both of us and played us against each other. I crossed my arms and asked him why he was at my door. He said he needed me, that I was the only good thing he'd ever had and he'd thrown it away for someone who never cared about him at all, that Emily had used him to get back at me and he'd been too stupid to see it, that everything she'd told him about our relationship being broken was a lie because she wanted to justify her own actions. I asked him if he really thought Emily manipulated him, or if maybe he just wanted to believe her because it was easier than admitting he was a cheater who destroyed his relationship for someone who seemed exciting and new. He started saying it wasn't like that. Emily had pursued him. She'd made him feel things he'd never felt before. Then he caught himself and said, but none of that mattered because it was all fake and I was the one he really loved, and could we please just talk about fixing this? I told him there was nothing to fix, that he'd made his choice when he asked for space to explore his feelings for my best friend. that what happened with Emily was exactly what he deserved and I wanted no part of his mess. He started crying, actually crying right there in my doorway. Said he'd lost everything, his relationship, his friends who were taking my side, his self-respect. That Emily had already moved on and was apparently talking to Jason about getting back together while he had nobody. That I was his only chance at happiness and he was begging me to give him another chance. I looked at this man who'd shared my bed for years, who I'd trusted completely, who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I felt absolutely nothing for him. I told him I hoped he learned something from this, that actions have consequences, and you don't get to treat people like garbage, and then come crawling back when it doesn't work out. That Emily showed him exactly who she was, someone who would cheat without hesitation, and he'd chosen to believe he was special enough to be the exception. Now he knew better. He kept trying to argue, kept saying we could go to couples therapy, he'd do anything I wanted, he'd prove he'd changed. I cut him off and said the conversation was over, told him to leave and not contact me again. He stood there for another minute, looking lost and broken. Then he finally turned and walked away. Saturday, I went to lunch with Josie, who'd driven down from Seattle to check on me. She said she was proud of me for standing my ground with Brian, but also mildly concerned about my revenge plot. I told her it wasn't revenge. It was just exposing the truth. Emily was always going to cheat on Brian eventually. I just helped speed up the timeline. Josie laughed and said I was kind of scary when I wanted to be, and she was taking notes for if she ever needed to handle a cheating boyfriend. We spent the afternoon shopping and getting our nails done, and it felt amazing to just exist without the weight of Brian and Emily's betrayal hanging over me. I posted photos of us on Instagram and didn't give a single thought to whether they'd see it. Sunday, Jason texted me saying Emily had been blowing up his phone all weekend. Apparently, she'd told Brian that Jason had pursued her and manipulated her into cheating, trying to make herself the victim. Brian hadn't believed her and had sent Jason a message apologizing for Emily's behavior and saying he understood now that Emily was the problem, not Jason or me. Jason said it was wild watching Emily spiral and try to rewrite history when there was literal video evidence of her initiating everything. He asked if I felt satisfied with how everything turned out, and I told him absolutely. Emily got exposed, Brian got exactly what he deserved, and I got to move on knowing I'd made them both face consequences for their actions. Thursday. Brian sent me a message on Instagram from what looked like a burner account. Said he was moving in with his brother permanently because he couldn't stand being in town where everything reminded him of his mistakes. That he'd probably always love me and regret what he did. That he hoped someday I could forgive him even if I never wanted to see him again. I didn't respond, just blocked that account too. Friday, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Emily's friend Deborah. She stopped me in the frozen food aisle and said she'd heard about everything that happened. I braced myself for her to defend Emily, but instead she said she'd always known Emily had problems with cheating, and she was glad someone finally called her out on it. That Emily had destroyed too many relationships with her inability to stay faithful, and maybe this would finally be her wake-up call. So, yeah, that's the end of the story. And to Brian and Emily, if you're somehow reading this, I hope it was worth it. I hope those 2 weeks in Florida were amazing, because that's all you got before reality came crashing down.